Welcome to the HawkCast with your host, AJ Hawk.
Dr. Steve Graef joins us for, I guess, a little bit of a different episode here on the HawkCast. Dr. Steve, it's funny calling you Dr. Steve Graef because I know you from Ohio State, member of the 2002 National Championship squad. Steve, a dominant defensive lineman in there just kicking ass every day. And now you have a ponytail and you're helping dudes out with all kind of issues. So, Steve, welcome, man.
Hey, appreciate being here, AJ. It's so good to see you on the other end. It had been a while until that 2nd and 7, I think, was actually what brought us back together. And I remember having a nice little chat, and you're like, "Wow, you're a doctor now. You're actually a psychologist. Like, when did that happen?" So it's cool to kind of come full circle, brother.
It is. And so are you considered a sports psychologist?
Yeah, so considered sports psychologist, though my training was more in counseling psychology back in the day. So what really is kind of nice about that is, as a counseling psychologist, my training was in working with the worried well on just the everyday shit that people struggle with from time to time. So it's the working moms, it's the college kids, it's the 30-year-olds that are kind of figuring out transition. So it's all of these individuals that are struggling with the things that a lot of people typically do. But over time, I realized, you know what, I can't leave the athletic environment. Like, this is something that's still a part of me. You mentioned the dominant defensive end. I wouldn't go that far, but I certainly kept the team GPA up and was a hell of a scout team member. Though if anybody are huge Ohio State fans, they might have remembered the 2 plays against Kent State that I got in when we were up about 45 points. And Coach Haycock said, "Graef, get your ass in there. It's time to go." So for the true Buckeyes, they might remember the name. But I knew that it was a population that I wanted to work with because it was one that was near and dear to who I was.
So I heard you use the term worried well. What is that?
Yeah, so worried well, I think when people bring to mind the idea of psychology, images of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest or the latest Leonardo DiCaprio film of just these people with intense psychological concerns spinning around in a circle, beating their heads against the wall, hallucinating, picturing zombies outside of their bedroom. And the reality is that's a very small subset of individuals that have that severe of pathology and gosh, they're super struggling, but they're out of touch with reality a lot of times. For the large majority of us, we're just trying to get by, and whether you're fortunate to play in the league, you got good things going on in some other performance career or whatever it is, we can still suffer from anxiety. There's times where we still get in a funk. There's times where we're struggling in a relationship. Parents pass away. Friends pass away. We might find ourselves addicted to something. So there's a variety of things that ultimately can end up throwing us off the path that we want to be on in life. And so you don't need to be this crazy sick person to get better. So that's what I mean by the worried well. It's just the everyday individual, you and I, that struggle with time to time.
All right, so let's just say we're all not completely crazy when it comes to the type of people you're helping, but at some point, everybody needs a little bit of help, I guess, is what you're kind of speaking to, almost like the counselor role, not like a guidance counselor at school, but are you sitting there listening to people's problems and it feels like people just need someone to talk to?
Yeah, dude, I think 100%. I think there's a few different categories that people can kind of fall into. And maybe not the people fall into, but maybe how they utilize the space of counseling. And I think the space of counseling is really unique because, as I mentioned, we struggle with stuff, right? And I don't like to change my own oil, right? I don't like to fill my own cavities. I sure as hell don't like to fold my own laundry, and that's why a lot of times I don't. But so there's people that we go to for those particular tasks, all right? When we have an issue or a struggle or a concern that we need helped out with. And so we go to those people. But somewhere along the lines, there was this disconnect that what happens up here we're not going to talk to people about. That's something that we have to figure out on our own. That's something that we have to deal with on our own. And so at some point, a psychologist was created. All right. And I don't know when, I don't know the history of psychology that well, but at some point a psychologist was created. So now we have this space where people are able to come in for the 50-minute hour and divulge whatever it is that they want to talk about. And I think it's kind of fucked up, but one of the cool things that I thought about psychology was literally somebody could have killed somebody before they walked into my office. And if they tell me that they did, I don't have to say anything about it. Now, if they say, Steve, Doc, I'm going to go, the moment I leave here, I'm going to go kill somebody, well, then I got a problem. I got to make sure they're safe. But that's the issue about confidentiality. And it's so strong that what people talk about in here stays in here. And so that's a very powerful aspect. So some people use that just as, you know what, my life otherwise is a tornado sometimes. So to actually have a space where I can just talk to somebody that's unbiased, that's non-judgmental, that's going to accept me for me, is very powerful. Because if you think about the people that we talk to our parents. So let's assume we tell our parents, Mom and Dad, I'm having a bad time in my relationship, or I'm having a bad time. Then you're getting the text every day like, oh, baby, it's going to be okay. Or the next time you bring her around or whatever, it's like, oh, so-and-so's back. Gosh, I wonder if she's, made any more snarky comments to my boy. So it's like we can't talk to our parents necessarily about that. Our friends, it's like, man, AJ, dude, it's just been a tough week. I'm like, man, I know, Steve, I feel you. Let me tell you about my week, right? And so they flip it around, right? Or somebody has skin in the game, right? A lot of people have skin in the game. And the nice thing about psychologists, counselors, coaches, call them what you will, we don't have any skin in the game. So whether you want to keep playing sport or not, whether you want to stay in the relationship or not, ultimately we're here to like, hey, this is your prerogative, but let's figure out what's going to be best for you. So that dumping can be very powerful. What also can be very powerful, though, is we're not just built with ears, psychologists. We don't go to school for 4 + 8 years to just learn how to listen. There's also strategies and interventions that we can apply with people that can help them to get back onto the right track as well, either helping them engage in better decision making and behaviors, or think a little bit better, or be able to process the emotions that are kind of stuck in them that they need to get out and make sense of. But that's not comfortable for everybody to sit in, as you might imagine.
There's a lot of good stuff, but I have to go back to the first thing you said about if someone came, so if I shot someone in the head and walked into your office and told you that, don't you, I thought legally if it's a crime or something, you have to divulge that to the cops.
If it's an adult, don't have to do that.
So, okay, so let's just hypothetically, which I don't like to deal in them, but we will for this moment. Mm-hmm. I shoot someone on the sidewalk in front of your office, and I walk up and I'm like, hey, man, I just really didn't like that dude. I had to kill this guy, but you didn't see it, but I told you about it. There was a murder. What would you do?
Well, I'd have to consult about it, and I would really strongly encourage the individual to turn themselves in. Now, having said that, if they just engaged in that crime, it's very easy for me as a professional to say this person could be at future risk here, and I don't want to jeopardize society any more than what's already been jeopardized. So even though technically I wouldn't have to say anything, I would likely still say something for the future safety of somebody else. How do I know it ends here? I can't be certain of that.
Okay, so you could kind of go around it if someone does tell you something that you feel like. So yeah, let's say that they told you they raped somebody or they murdered something really bad, violent. You technically aren't supposed to have to go to the law, but you, in your own mind, you could come to the law and say, I feel like this person may do this again.
Or I would help them as their psychologist to say, hey, I'm here with you. You made a really bad decision here. And so let's go turn you in together.
That's not happening, bro. They're not turning themselves in.
Well, maybe in my idealistic world, that might be a bit difficult, but it's the same thing that would, if I feel that they're a future jeopardy, then I would call the police. Absolutely. I mean, first things is you want the client to be able to take that process into their own hands. So if you have a suicidal client, you would want them, here's the deal, man. I can either, and this is some heavy stuff right off the bat, bro. Man, welcome to the HawkCast, everybody.
I like it. It's a little different, man.
Absolutely. We're going to get Aaron Rodgers views on at least the level views on the YouTube at least. So here we have two ways of doing this, AJ. Like, you're struggling. I'm really concerned about your safety right now. So we have two ways of doing this. One, I want you to take ownership of your life and your mental well-being, and I'm going to move with you to turn you into an emergency room where they can better care for you. All right. Or if you choose not to do that, then I'm going to have to take matters into my own hands and call the law enforcements to make sure that you're safe. And that's not blindsiding them. That's number one, day one of informed consent. The limitations, confidentiality is very powerful in psychology, but there are limitations to that. And if you mess around with those limitations, these are the ramifications associated with that, which could mean hospitalization or criminal action.
So how are you different than a psychiatrist?
Psychiatrists are medical doctors that prescribe medication. So they went to med school. They had to do all their different residencies and rotations in cardiology and urology and all that. But they specialize in the psychological disorders. And as a result of the MD or DO or whatever they happen to be, they can prescribe medication. Now, some nurse practitioners are able to prescribe psych medication as well. But just a true psychologist, for the most part, there are some states that allow psychologists to have prescription privileges. I believe New Mexico and maybe a couple other states where the amount of psychiatrists are so limited that they want people to have access to experts that can still prescribe medication. In the state of Ohio, that's not the case. Though in the future, just because psychiatry, the amount of individuals, from my understanding, going into psychiatry, it's unfortunately starting to decline a bit. And I think there's an incline in mental health needs and prescription needs. So at some point, the bubble's going to burst and they're going to need more people that have that skill set. So I do not prescribe medication. Psychiatrists do, and they're medical doctors. Psychologists are either PhDs or PsyDs, PSYD.
Okay.
PsyD.
I like how when you were talking about the psychiatrists going through the rounds, you threw in a urologist as one of your few examples.
Yeah, well, got to mix it up on the HawkCast, right?
I guess it was just on the tip of your brain. You were thinking about it. Freudian slip, right?
Absolutely. Hey, sometimes Freud actually said, hey, sometimes a cigar is just a cigar. Right?
Okay, so that you hit on something right there big time. I think that is hugely relevant right now is the, like, whatever you want to call the psych meds that are being handed out, and the whole psych meds versus like these mass shooters. It seems like a lot of these guys, when you go down the list of the people that are walking into movie theaters and just shooting people for random, or walking into churches, they either were on psych meds, they were coming off of psych meds, they didn't take them, all that stuff. Is that something that is like booming at the moment?
Man, well, that's why I love the opportunity to have this time to speak with you, because I can imagine there's a diverse population of people that are going to be listening to this type of podcast, more so than like if I was doing a podcast for the American Psychological Association or something. So this is really good. And so to your point, there's a difference between correlation and causation. All right. There's a very positive correlation between ice cream sales and murders. Okay, because it's more likely that murders are going to happen in the summertime. A lot of people are outside. It's hot. Your back is sticking to your vinyl seat in your car. You get irritated. Some asshole cuts you off. And you know what? I'm going to pop off somebody, right? I'm pissed. Mm-hmm. I'm pissed. All right. Well, what else do people eat a lot of in the summer? Ice cream. So ice cream sales go up, murders go up, but brain freeze, though annoying, is not going to cause you to kill somebody. Right? So that's why it's a correlation, not a cause and effect. So with the individuals that have made some really stupid decisions, maybe have been out of whack mentally, could there be a medicine component to that? Perhaps, but then we also have to think about the millions of people, the hundreds of thousands of people, the millions of people that are on psych drugs successfully, safely, and outside of maybe a little bit of IBS or some headaches and some weight gain, they're otherwise doing pretty good with being on those things. But I think the media, and they're trying to create news stories and such, and I don't think it's something to not look at. But we also just can't jump to the conclusion that the reason why this person shot up 20 people was because they went off their psych meds. There's other variables involved there.
That's interesting, man.
But I think that's a natural reaction.
It's weird. It really is. Like, what comes to mind is the one kid, I forget who he went, but they had a gun safe. He knew the code. He opened it up and shot his mom at her home, and then he went. I don't think that was the movie theater shooting. Do you remember that one?
I don't.
I'm sure people they know instantly, but I just can't think of exactly what he did after he killed his mom. But I remember after he went, and it wasn't Sandy Hook, or it wasn't where I don't think, but he went and shot up a school or some kind of killed multiple people. They realized that his mom was laying dead as well.
His mom was what as well?
His mom was dead. He killed her first.
Oh,
he got
right.
the family gun out, shot her, and everyone's saying, "Why would you ever let your son was on?" Because I think he had a history with psych meds and had some issues that he had been dealing with over the years, and they knew the kid was a little bit off, as they say, maybe. And so everyone was saying, "Why would this kid know the safe? Like, why would he know the code to the safe?"
Mm-hmm. Well, that's the thing about mental illness is there's a lot of variables involved, and we can't take things for granted. It's kind of like with athletics and performance. Certainly you want to be able to leverage as much of an aspect to be able to be successful, right? So you're gonna prep for the team. You're gonna make sure you're big, strong, fast as possible, flexible. You're gonna make sure you get a good night's sleep, proper nutrition, and even at that, there's a chance that you might not be successful. And the same thing applies, unfortunately, with mental illness. There's so much. We're just now starting to deep dive into the brain and starting to figure some of this stuff out. And I will be very excited to see what the next 50 years holds in the world of psychology and psychiatry. But right now, there's some things that we know, there's some things that we don't know, but we have to leverage as much of that stuff as possible. And we can see the potential when those variety of things are not being handled in a proper way. Bad things can happen. But anytime, there's always the possibility that somebody's going to slip through the cracks. Totally. And it's no doubt unfortunate. 100%.
Of course. Why has there been like an uptick in whatever you want to call you guys, mind coaches, sports psychologists, in the last 10 years? We all see it now, especially golfers, MMA fighters. I know a big example would be like Jason Day. They show him closing his eyes a lot and visualizing shots. I think he openly speaks about having a air quotes mind coach, whatever you want to say. Like, what's been did someone put it on the map? Did one big time athlete have a guy that went public, and now it seems like it's just trickled down? There's a lot more of you guys.
So the interesting thing is sports psychology has been around a long time. I had the great fortune of working on a book chapter with Al Kornspan and David Baker at the University of Akron on the prehistory of sports psychology. And it was actually interesting, and you'll appreciate this being down towards the Cincinnati area and of course being at Ohio State, is Coach Paul Brown was one of the original coaches that would use psychological and intelligence testing with his players. And as a result of how they would score on the intelligence test, he would determine whether they would be a good quarterback, a more thoughtful linebacker, a better offensive lineman, better defensive lineman, and he would use that as a way to kind of categorize and then switch around some of the talent that was on his particular teams. And obviously this is in the 50s and 60s that he was doing this. And a lot of that came out of the Army alpha beta testing that was going on after World War II that he picked up on. He very much an Army history nut when he was in the ROTC at Miami, Oxford. And so he brought that stuff with him to sport and to the Cleveland Browns and Ohio State Buckeyes and the Cincinnati Bengals. So it's been around there for a while. I think what has really served as a catalyst for that is it's happened in steps. And I think this happens with a lot of professions. Athletic trainers, when they were first on the map, people were like, athletic trainers, who are these people, right? Get away from my ankles. No, I don't want to stand on a BOSU ball. Just let me talk to Doc and let him give me a shot. But then athletic trainers started gathering some momentum. And now, there's an athletic trainer at hopefully every single high school and certainly every single college as well. And I think you start to see the same thing occurring with psychologists and sports psychologists in particular, where Phil Jackson's talking about the mind. Michael Jordan would identify as being a mentally tough individual. Then you start seeing Tiger Woods really talking specifically about the power of mental toughness and visualization at a very young age. You have Bob Rotella that's doing, you're a golfer, right? You know, golf is not a game of perfect and these types of things. So people start hearing about it. And then they start being more vocal about it. So then you start hearing about Mike Gervais with the Seattle Seahawks, other individuals that are the Greg Hardens up at Michigan that Tom Brady will refer to. And so people start hearing this, and it's like, well, it's been successful with this person. Maybe I should give it a shot as well. And the really cool thing is now there's a lot more graduate programs that are out there that are producing good, competent psychologists that can either work on strictly the mental, the performance aspect of sport, or the performance aspect of sport and the clinical aspect of life. There's a difference there, 100% as far as where that what that training actually looks like. So I think it's a combination of the profession itself is just kind of steadily growing, in addition to just more awareness of it, and I love this part. This is the part that makes Steve-O kind of really, really happy, is the stigma is starting to finally decrease, because that's the shit that bothers me is, again, I don't want to go to the mechanic. I'm supposed to change my own oil. Who says that, right? Nobody says that, right? Oh, I don't want to be seen at the Jiffy Lube because someone might think you're supposed to take care of your own oil. You know what? If you got shit bouncing around in your brain, go talk to somebody about it. And it doesn't have to be your wife. It doesn't have to be your friend. It doesn't have to be your parents. It can actually be somebody that kind of knows the process, an expert in the process. You're an expert in you. I'm an expert in the process. And together, hopefully, we can make some magic happen. Good podcast. We'll see you later, bro.
I like it. Yeah, you drop the mic. For the audio listeners, Steve got very demonstrative during the stigma portion of that. And that was going to be my question. The stigma, it's still there, especially in like combat sports, I feel like. Fighting is more of like a MMA guys, you talk to them, a lot of them do have guys that they are sports psychologists that come with them and they consult with before fights just to get them in like the right frame of mind, I guess, going into fight. I've listened to Donald Cowboy Cerrone. I don't know if he mentions a specific mind coach or whatever, but he talks about his trainer. They would make the walk before one of his fights recently. He said, well, we made that walk like 7 or 8 times into the octagon. Like he like rehearsed it, practicing walking into the octagon before anyone even got in the arena. And they went through like this whole process of what was going to happen on the fight. And that fight that he had, he dominated and looked amazing. So what is that whole thing where people rehearse and visualize, like for the guy that is sitting on his couch and has never heard anything like this, like what would make someone do that, and how is that not just garbage stuff that we should all just push back and not even think about?
Yeah, that's a great question. What I love about the work that I do and how I explain it to people is the things that we talk about, at least the skills that we talk about, the large majority of the skills and interventions that I will work with people on to try to get better at. I was about to say perfect. I don't know if it's truly ever perfected, but certainly get better at, are things that we already do. Okay, so the guy on his couch before he went for the job interview, right, at his job wherever he's working, the bank, or and I remember the Joe Couch Potato. I watched the Lewis Howes episode, and you were like, why do I call him Joe Couch Potato? But you know what? There's Joe and Jane Couch Potato that's out there. We don't have to deny the reality that in America and across the universe, there may in fact be couch potatoes, though that likelihood is decreasing with the whole Pokemon Go craze. So a lot of those couch potatoes will be outside searching for make-believe Pokemon. So So the cool thing are these particular skills are things that we already do. So this individual, Joe Couch Potato or whoever, just Joe, night before he goes in for a job interview, he goes to lay his head down for bed, and he might actually be picturing himself, I wonder how that interview is going to go, right? I wonder what types of questions. And nobody's telling him. It's not like the visualization fairy is like, hey, Joe, make sure you visualize this, right? See you later, and fly away. He's just kind of doing that naturally. And then when Joe goes into the waiting room, or on his drive in, he might be engaging in self-talk, right? Hey, Joe, you can do this, man. You got this. And then the negative Joe is going to be like, no, you son of a bitch. Are you serious? When was the last time you had a job, you couch potato? And it's like, no, Joe, you got this one. Just stay positive. You got it. So he's engaging in self-talk. Then when he pulls in, he's about ready to go into the waiting room, and it's like, Joe, Mr. Donaldson is ready to see you. Joe might take a deep breath, say to himself, okay, here goes nothing. And again, it's not like the deep breathing fairy came and kind of told him to engage in deep breathing. So some of these very baseline skills, Tim Ferriss talks about the 80-20 rule, where 20% of the effort yields 80% of the results. Some of these 20% skills can have profound impact on people when they're leveraged and done and implemented on purpose. So I transfer that now to the reality of the MMA fighter who maybe they're physically strong, but they want to just take their game to the next level. All right. And you look at any sport and any performance, there's 5 components to it. All right. There's the physical. So in MMA fighting, you got to be big, you got to be strong, you got to be fast, you got to have all that. Okay. Flexible. There's the technical. You got to know what you're doing from a fighting style standpoint, whether you're a leg guy or a striker or you do jiu-jitsu or whatever your particular technique is, you got to make sure that's on lockdown. There is a tactical component, right? So you got to have good strategy. If you just go out just kind of like Tasmanian devil, you're going to burn out in the first, 30 seconds, and the guy's going to punch you in the face and it's going to be done. And Joe Rogan's going to come in and do his thing. There's the social component. So how do you get along with your trainer? How do you get along with your nutritionist? How do you get along with the other fighters, with the refs? How's your reputation? There's the social component. And then the final piece is the mental component. So my focus largely, though I think it overlaps, is the mental component. And so we talk about building confidence, composure, and concentration. We have some skills, visualization, self-talk, energy management, that we apply to that situation. Rehearsal obviously is one of those to help them become a better fighter. So for Joe Couch Potato, Joe, what's up, bro? These are things that you already have. Now we're just doing it on purpose. So you're setting your intent. You're setting your intent, and you're leveraging all the things that are ultimately going to help you out. Hell, I could be the most mentally tough son of a bitch in the world, but if I can't do a very good backswing, I'm not going to be a good golfer. I don't care how many times you visualize it. You got to have all those things kind of working for you.
All right. So, man, the 5 things, that's pretty cool. So let's say you went into let's just say a fighter hired you to come into his training camp. He has a 12-week training camp. Let's say it's a long one before a big fight. He has his wrestling coach. He has his jiu-jitsu guy, his striking coach, all these guys. And then he says, hey, guys, this camp, I'm bringing in a new guy to come kind of help me out here. Here's big Stevie boy. And they see this dude walk in. You say, hey, I'm Dr. Steve, and you're probably carrying like a yoga mat, and you have your ponytail and puka shell necklace or something. And they're like, and so instantly these big tough dudes are like, who is this dude? What a douche. You got to be kidding me. Get this guy out of here. How do you break down that wall?
By aligning with the resistance. And that's something that I think, not to toot my own horn, but like that I think I do a good job of, and the ones that do a really good job, they align with the resistance. You were talking to the guy from Orr, and he was when he would open up for Dave Matthews Band, everybody would turn not everybody, but the front row would kind of turn their backs. And so he's like, man, you just got to keep playing or whatever. And certainly you want to kind of preach to the people that want to listen, and you don't really worry about the other ones. But I have a tendency to, I want to get to I want the tough nuts to crack. I want to get to those guys. All right, going back to the urology statement.
Yes. Good callback.
I want the tough nuts to crack. Yeah, and because if I can crack, like the people that are into it, they're going to be into it regardless. And I think the individuals that aren't, how you align with that resistance. And so you think about ahead of time, what's going to be their hangups? Okay, hangup number 1 might be, I don't need a coach. I can do this on my own. Okay. And so that's where the mechanic kind of aspect happens. All right. Where I might say, you know what? I thought I had all shit figured out too. But you know what? There are actually people that know something a little bit more about this particular mechanism that may be helpful. All right. Now you're an expert in you know what works for you. but I have a couple understandings about some of this other stuff that may be helpful. So you get into that would be one of those things. I would also talk about how this is stuff that you're doing already, but doing it on purpose. So my guess is when you were 8 years old, Brock Lesnar, you could probably go like that. And some might call that a punch. Okay? Mm-hmm. But there's a difference between just engaging in that movement and actually punching for a purpose. Brock, you've learned how to punch with a purpose. And then that's how you've found yourself being successful. So we want to take these skills and have them become more purposeful. And then I also say, like, you know what? I'm not your guru. You know, Tony Robbins actually is coming out with a documentary on Netflix, July 15th. I'm not your guru. I'm not the guru. I'm not the person that knows everything. I'm just a person with a particular expertise that is here to help you, along with all of these other people, to help you leverage all the different things that we know help out with success. And they're all on equal playing field. They're the physical, they're the technical, they're the tactical, they're the social, and they're the mental. Though it is interesting. Okay, this is interesting. I have the luxury at Ohio State. I talk with a lot of teams, and I present a lot in my private practice and everything like that to groups of people. And I don't care what sport it is, football, basketball, golf, rifle, gymnastics, whatever. I ask people how much of their sport do they feel is mental? What percentage of their sport is mental? What would you say in the game of football? How much you think is mental?
Jeez. It's a tough question, just because you have, like you said, you have to have that physical as well. Like, I'm, as a 5 foot, say a guy's 5'6", we know he's not gonna be a center in the NBA. But I would say once you're there, I can't even like exactly figure out what I mean, but what I think it's over 80% mental for sure, 90% maybe.
Okay, so I didn't even have to. As a disclaimer, I didn't even slip AJ a $20 bill or whatever to say that. Right? He said that organically. And you know what's crazy, dude, is everybody says that. Everybody says at least 50%. And then I ask him this question: what percentage of the time do you spend working on the mental aspect of your sport?
Most people, zero.
Most people, zero. And I'm not the only one that asked that question. That's a classic sports psychologist question to kind of bring to light. So you're telling me if 50% of my success with chicks would be if I did this one thing, but I'm not going to be like, dude, you're crazy. You would have 50% more return on investment if you did this with your banker, and you're not going to. You would be able to make 50% more tackles if you did this, but you're not going to. Like, they would look at you, you're crazy. And yet through that discussion, it comes up time and time and time again. So to our MMA fighter, I think those would all be kind of pieces of ammunition that I would help align with the resistance and say, let's just give it a shot, bro. I mean, hell, you got all these other people that are helping you out. I'll do my part. They do their part. Process.
Okay, well,
because you're good enough, you're smart enough, and I got
people like yeah. Was that Stuart Smalley? Is that right? Okay.
Yeah.
I was trying to come up with that the name for that when I did another guy's podcast, Inside Quest. I couldn't think of the name, but what would be one? Okay, so let's just say, because one of the things I know is a part of the resistance would say there's not enough time in the day. I have all these things I have to do. I don't have time for that. What would you say the number one thing that people could do to, let's just say, athletes, to help themselves out when it comes to the mental aspect?
Yeah, 100%. I think the large majority of the individuals that I meet with, ultimately I talk about anxiety management. And when we talk about anxiety management, we talk about focusing on the breath. That's like the one thing. If I had to, if you're like, Steve, you just got to pick, it would be the breath. And the reason being is for a few, okay, as grammatically incorrect as that was. Number one, from a physiology standpoint, from a physical standpoint, deliberately slowing down the breath tricks the body and the brain into believing that there's no threat, okay? And I'm coming from the foundation that the majority of the people that I ultimately work with are stressed out or anxious about their performance. because they don't want to screw up. They don't want to get released. They don't want to get pissed off. They want to piss coach off. They don't want to get re-injured. Anxiety, 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 anxiety. 100%. Not 100%, but you get it. Mm-hmm. So by deliberately slowing down our breath, that's going to trick our body and the brains into thinking, hey, all is well, I'm chill, I'm cool. Because we have two systems. We have the fight or flight. So if a big saber-toothed tiger jumped in your little studio there, your heart rate would start increasing, your breathing rate would increase, your muscles would tense up. All of that is not conducive necessarily to good performance. A little bit of it is, but not necessarily, especially in times of stress. By deliberately slowing down our breath, we also have this relaxation response, the chill and still, which is slower breath, slower heart rate, lower blood pressure, okay? The beauty of that is our breath. I can't tell my heart to speed up or slow down. I can't tell my muscles to relax or tense. What I can deliberately do on purpose is either speed up or slow down my breath. So by speeding up the breath, that's essentially what a warm-up is. It gets you ready for battle. It warms you up for battle. By slowing down our breath, it tricks the body and the mind into thinking that we're relaxed. So it releases muscle tension and reduces the perception that there's any threat around us. It's based on evolution. Number two, AJ and listeners, if we're focused on the breath, what are we not focused on?
The anxiety.
Anything else that's causing the anxiety and the anxiety itself. Absolutely right? And so you're right. Simply the anxiety. I'm focused on the breath. I'm not focused on all this other bullshit that's trying to get into my head. Okay. Now, again, going back to the anxiety fairy, it's not like she just comes around and goes, poof, okay, you don't have a Super Bowl to play, or poof, you don't have a tryout for a ballet to worry about, or poof, this isn't your dream job that you're interviewing for. No, that shit is all still there. But what it does do is by deliberately focusing on the breath, you zero yourself in, okay? Physiologically, you're calming yourself down. And it's the equivalent of, you remember the Etch-a-Sketch?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So we would try to draw the Mona Lisa, and then it ended just looking up like a drunk driving version of Tron. And so you would like have to shake it. But what happened when you shook it? All was clear. And then you could start again. So by focusing on the breath, you shake the Etch-a-Sketch, all is clear, and then you're able to more deliberately think about and focus on what's going to help me perform to the best of my ability right now. And that can be in work, that can be in relationships, that could be in the bedroom, that could be on the football field, that could be, wherever. Taking a standardized test. So that's the process. And that's why I think the breath is the number one deal.
Are you aware of Wim Hof?
No, tell me about Wim Hof.
Oh man, you're gonna have to look him up, man. You might get lost in a YouTube triangle tonight looking up his videos. So he has this awesome breathing technique. Wim is I don't even know how to describe this dude, man. He's been on Joe Rogan's podcast. He's been on a lot of different ones. He has his own program now that his son actually finally put him out there publicly. He's been doing it for years, but he's done these amazing feats where he will sit in the ice cold water for hours at a time, swim underneath this ice cap. Like, he's really big into cold things that are cold. He says like cold is God. He thinks cold really tests you, and he has this whole breathing technique, this real deep breathing technique where you breathe all the way in, then you release it out, and you breathe all the way in, release, and then you do this like 20 times, and you hold your breath with your lungs full of air, and then you blow it out and you hold your breath again with when you're empty, and you keep doing this, and over time people can hold their breath for 3-4 minutes. He can hold his breath for a really long time, but he like mastered this breathing thing that he said he came up with at a time of stress when his wife actually died years ago. And it was to get over grief, he said. And he does all these amazing feats where he will it's all from breathing, man. And I've tried his whole breathing technique. It's pretty awesome. You get lightheaded, and you start seeing little things in your head and your eyes. And he says like, it's good. It's good. You want to see that.
That's incredible. And Wim Hof, like, I'm not going to hear about this guy in graduate school or anything necessarily like that. And though I do, I'm speaking on behalf of a lot of psychologists here, I do think there's a lot of important stuff that can happen from a degreed, credentialed individual. right? But then I also think, man, there's a ton of great knowledge bases that are out there that are doing a lot of good for a lot of people. And I think that's a prime example of that. And it's all based on, founded science and research, the power of the breath, brother. I want to look that guy up. I like that too. Cold as God.
Yeah, it's something I'm not doing him justice because he is an amazing dude, and you can read about him and watch his videos. I watch the videos with my little 5-year-old daughter sometimes before I would drop her off at school. We'll pull one of his videos up, and I'll have her try to do the breathing. We'll do it with her because I try to get her to breathe when she's freaking out or having one of her moments where she wants to throw a tantrum. So, hey, let's try some Wim Hof. And at first she fought a little bit, and then now she'll ask for, Dad, let's do Wim Hof. I'm like, yes.
That is awesome, man. And you're starting that ability to self-regulate and manage one's stress at a very young age. Did you ever find that you've always seemed like a pretty mentally tough with it dude. Like, I think temperament wise, you always seemed like somebody that you're not gonna get these tsunami type waves. Like, you just very well kind of managed and controlled. Now there could be a shit ton of stuff going on under the surface, okay, but never really saw that. Do you feel as though, one, that's true, right? That you think you're just built a little bit more mentally tough for a variety of reasons, maybe just genetically or just over time you kind of develop that way. Two, if yes and or no, were there some things that you think you did that were tried and true that allowed you to get in a frame of mind that you needed to complete a very aggressive, violent, but incredible sport? And then three, how do you implement that in your kids, and how do you think how do you think you would go about doing that?
Wow, that's a good one. I feel like I'm very, very mentally tough when it comes to certain things, and then super mentally weak in other aspects. Just like my wife jokes about it, and we joke about it, but I freak out about the dumbest things, like the elastic in my socks or my collar on my shirt. Like, I have weird, like almost OCD type things. I try to do laundry every day. I want to wash my workout clothes myself. Like, I just have weird things like that where if it doesn't happen, I can feel getting like short with people. Like, no, I'm just gonna do it. If someone asks me, what are you talking about? Who cares? Just wear it. I'm like, no, I need my socks. Like, perfect. Like, I have weird, and I know I know I got issues, man. This is my deal. And so I have issues like things like that, weird things. But when it comes to the sports, I think being naive to everything, kind of being naive to how big of a deal it is. I've spoken on this before. I think it's a good thing at times, especially when you're young. You don't really realize how big of a deal it is, what you're doing, and how big of an impact it has on the people around you. And sometimes that's really good. And so that's how I would view that. But man, passing it on to my kids, as I've gotten older, I'm 32 now. That's like my main thought in everything that I do in life is, what can I pass on to my kids that'll help them if they do have issues, when they do have anxiety, whatever. How can I put them in the best position to be good, productive people that people want to be around and make others around them feel better. So it's like looking out. That's why the internet and everything's so cool now. I can find guys like Wim Hof, which 10 years ago, 15 years ago, I wouldn't have been able to find his stuff.
Yeah, it's incredible. And first off, thank you for kind of expressing and talking about those little quirks that you have, right? Because there could be Joe Couch Potato that is like, man, I thought I was the only one that's struggling with this. and here AJ, kind of helped the cause there a bit. It reminded me, I would always say when I was in grad school, that I thought the American Psychological Association, which is sometimes gets called Little APA, compared to American Psychiatric Association. But nevertheless, it's not about a pissing contest. We do what we do, and we're loving what we do, and we get to help a lot of people out. But I always thought, you know what, I need to go to the president of the APA and tell them to give an honorary award to Howard Stern. And people are probably sitting there like, Steve, what are you talking about? He has porn stars come in and ride this vibrating, like, horse thing. And the reason being is certainly in kind of the latter half of his career, and I wasn't like a religious listener by any means. I know a lot of people are, although I can appreciate Howard and his interviewing ability and everything like that. But what I really appreciated was I don't think a day would go by where he didn't talk about his own psychological help. and his psychiatrist. And I think about the population of listeners in particular that are listening to Howard Stern, and you want to talk about how we reduce stigma. It's by people like that talking about and owning up to the realities of their own particular struggles. And if one person at home says, wow, I thought I was in the dark place and there wasn't anybody that goes through like this, and I see a person that I listen to, that I look up to, kind of engaging in these types of things, wow, that's awesome. So I always thought Howard Stern was kind of an ambassador for that, actually, as wild as that seems. Maybe not so much in other things, but
no, it makes sense, man. It really does. Now that you said it, it does. And I'm kind of probably on the same wavelength with you, with Howard Stern. Like, I don't listen every day. I never did, but I love hearing him interview people because it's true. He's one of the best. Because he's not. I think the biggest reason he's one of the best, he's not scared to relate to people and talk about his faults. I mean, one of his biggest running jokes ever is when he tells people he has a small penis. And so people instantly, like, I think, like, oh man, okay, that probably makes them feel comfortable.
Absolutely right. Yeah, just releases the tension. Like, nothing you say in this interview, theoretically, right, in the masculine culture, can be worse than me openly identifying that I have a small penis, and Betho can attest to that, right? But you speak to a larger concept, and I think for the listeners at home, and this is something that's, I think, professionally, it's kind of helped me out, and I'd be curious to get your take on if the same thing applies in professional sports, because I think it applies in musicianship. But I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on professional sports. The importance of authenticity. And in my graduate training, it's a byproduct of training that you're going to have supervisees that have their own particular theoretical orientation. And but what I mean by theoretical orientation is how they view change and what they think. If I approach doing my therapy in this type of way, based on this theory, based on these ways of doing things, I think that leads to client change because clients need X, Y, or Z to happen in the therapeutic session or in their lives. So you line up 15 different psychologists, you might have 15 different ways of doing things. And so through graduate training, of course, they want to expose you to as many of those theories as possible. So then you can pick and choose which ones relate most for you, how do you think client change occurs, and then ultimately do that in the session. But over time, you start to feel like a little bit of a robot, right? Because if you have somebody that's all about, no, all client change happens with how they're thinking. And so when I'm with that supervisee, I'm talking about, all right, well, we got to change your thinking. We got to change your thinking. We got to change your thinking. But then eventually you become your own practitioner and you have to figure that shit out on your own. Sometimes you become your own steel worker and you have to figure that shit out on your own. Sometimes you're representing yourself as an NFL football player and you have to figure that shit out on your own. And what I've found as I've continued to grow and develop with other mentors, and just the more authentic that I've become as a psychologist, the better of job that I've done and the better responses that I've seen from people, whether that includes cussing, whether that includes bringing more of myself and divulging more about my successes and my shits as well. I think, again, that kind of puts people at ease, kind of like the Howard Stern type of thing. So for me, authenticity is a very, very good thing. Do you think that applies in the world of athletics?
Yes, I think being authentic in your life, everything it carries over. And that's one of my biggest takeaways in any kind of speech I ever give or talk to groups. I tell people, be who you are, man. Be authentic, because we can see, especially now, I think kids are growing up, they can see through it a lot quicker as well. They can see when someone's authentic and they can take to it. And regardless, it's one of the weird kind of themes I've been talking about the last couple of months on different podcasts, on this one, about being authentic and just being you. And we may not like what you are, but we can respect it if you're true. And I mean, I would almost think of right now, the guy that popped into my head was Coach Mark D'Antonio. You played for him. Mm-hmm. So D'Antonio is one of the most, he's very, very authentic and one of the most respected guys, I think, as a coach. But it wasn't always the most fun playing for the guy. I mean, a lot of times, especially when I was a freshman, you walk around scared to death. He might kick you off the field if you felt like I had a strip of tape on my cleats and I ripped my shoelaces before I came out to practice. That's a real thing that happened to me once. And I was like, yeah. So,
and the socks, my God, the socks. Don't even start on the socks.
You're right. And he's a guy that I feel like in the most part, people had so much respect for that guy because we understood where he was coming from. He was never gonna fluff anything up or let you know. I've had some of the toughest meetings in my life with that guy where after we lost, you lose a game, he'd call you in one-on-one and you would watch the whole film of the game with him and he'd just show a clip of you maybe loafing or he thought you turned down a hit or something. He's like, what is that? Honestly, what? And he would just stare right through you. And it was so uncomfortable and so tough to deal with, but you come through and you're like, gosh, I love this dude. Like you love him for it. So he's so authentic that you really do have to respect it, I feel like.
Yeah, 100%, because you know it's coming from a good place. And I'm sure when you run into Coach now, like how that demeanor is probably a lot different. Mm-hmm. I imagine to some extent. I know my interactions with him after the fact have been different. I had a different role, obviously, than you did, of course, but still there was that presence that he had, and 100%. I think because he was all in, he was there. And again, the OAR interviewee, what he loved about Bruce, and I was like, man, I wonder if we're going to talk about Bruce at all, and because I'm one of the guys that are like Bruce fans, right? Okay. And what he said was great about Bruce was he's authentic to who he is, and that's going to ostracize a lot of people, whether it's the politics or just the nature of the songs. It ostracizes a lot of people, but he's there and he's present. Mark D'Antonio is there and he's present. Funny story. Remember the morning workout. So for those listening at home, imagine getting up at 5:30 in the morning in February. And you either get picked up if you're a younger classman, so a freshman, this is your first winter training, you don't know what the hell is going on, or you're sophomore, junior, senior, and you do. Either way, it's not good. It's not an enjoyable experience, right? So then you wake up at 5:30. You're at the Woody Hayes Athletic Training Facility, which is where we hung out. And starting at 6 o'clock were winter workouts. And winter workouts were basically, there was about 10 different stations that were set up. And each station, if you can bring into your mind, had a different thing that was going on. One station might be practicing good running technique. Another station might just be doing push-ups and sit-ups. Another station might be the dreaded cone drill. And for all you former jocks out there, we all know the cone drill. There's 4 cones that are set up. You sprint to one, you backpedal to the other, you karaoke to the other, and then you sprint back to the other one. All sorts of different variations. Well, the one day, I don't know if I didn't have my toast or Pop-Tart or whatever, but I was going around, and the entire time, the stomach just wasn't feeling it. And so I'm about ready to turn on the second repetition of the cone drill, and Coach D'Antonio's looking over. So I feel it start to come up, and I'm like, oh shit, what's going to happen here? What's going to happen here? And I throw up into my hand. And then now this is all like slow motion, so it's like dum 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 dum. I look at my hand, I look at Coach D'Antonio. I look at my hand, I look at Coach D'Antonio, dum 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 dum. And I take it, put it back to my mouth, swallow the vomit, and Coach D'Antonio Dino goes, that a boy, Graef. So he was in that moment. Coach, if you're listening, I'm not sure if you remember that, but it was a great moment and something that I still share with people because as screwed up as that is, boy, is that an indication and a feather of the cap of how passionate that guy was to be up at 6 o'clock in the morning to see guys busting their ass to get better. And that's what it's about, man. Just trying to get better every single day. And it doesn't mean we're always going to stay on the path. Doesn't mean we're not going to throw up in our hand from time to time. But do we keep going? And do we keep getting back on the track? And do we not get derailed for too long? We bring ourselves back.
I love it.
Dino's great.
He is. You easily could have just thrown up in your hand and maybe thrown it off to the side and just kept going, though.
You know, that's the bizarre thing about it. But for whatever reason, I thought this is like, you know what it was? This is how much of a people pleaser I am, I guess. And I guess I'm in the right line of field. Though my initial interest in the field was not related to whether I would completely please people or not, though kind of. I didn't want to get vomit on where we were all running.
Okay, so you thought you were looking out for your teammates.
I was looking out for the teammates.
I love it. I hope Dino remembers that. And if I'm sure right when that happened, I'm sure he respected you a lot before that, but after that, I bet he would have died for it. He would have died for any of his guys, really. But
yeah, no doubt.
Okay, the one thing though that worries me about everyone talking about their feelings and telling everybody how you're feeling, puking all your stuff out. When is it too much to where we cross the line and we worry about everyone's safe space? I'm sure you've heard of this, the PC culture going on. Like, when does it get too? How do we know if we go too far with all this and everyone just wants to sit and be emo and talk about their feelings all day?
Right. Well, again, that's why I love the opportunity to be on this podcast, because as much as authenticity is important, and we've talked about that, I think we have another major theme that's coming up right here and right now, and that's balance. Right? Mm-hmm. Too much of anything is not a good time. In fact, we could kill ourselves by drinking too much water. Right? If we just drink water, it flushes out electrolytes, and we can die. So too much of anything is not good, and too little of anything isn't going to necessarily be good as well. So we have to find that balance, and I think that's why it's good that there are professionals that are out there that you can turn to that are able to kind of compartmentalize and anchor and, I guess, park that shit. So I'm not going to Jiffy Lube every single day and being like, hey, I need my oil change again. Remember? Like, don't I need my oil change? Like, well, no, like, you don't have to disclose everything to everybody all the time. Like, we have to absolutely be able to regulate our own emotions effectively. And I think that's what therapy and talking about our emotions ultimately allow us to do. So it's kind of like this pendulum gets swung where maybe we do need to rely on somebody and we go in and we talk a lot about our shit. But through that process, we want to learn skills to where we no longer have to rely on that individual as much anymore. In an ideal world, we work ourselves as psychologists out of a job. I don't think that's ever going to happen, but people eventually develop the skills and the resources to be able to handle their stuff on their own. And as far as a PC, I think there are, not that we have to get too deep in this. I mean, I think there are some historical things that warrant us to be PC. Okay? And we could have a whole nother discussion about a lot of this stuff as white males, okay, too. So there's something able-bodied, privileged, middle class, like we got a lot of good shit going for us, AJ.
Yeah.
So for us, PC might seem like I don't want to really talk about that, but for many other people, the things that they're asking people to be a bit more PC about, in many cases, not all, though in a lot of cases, it's because there is a certain context that makes it an important cause for us to be PC. And if we ignore that, it's ignoring kind of their frame of reference or their emotional kind of experience or history. But there is a balance, right? A coach yelled at my kid. Get over it. That's not PC. That's forgetting one of the purposes of a coach, okay? Even Jim Tressel yelled at people. John Wooden yelled at people, right? But there's certainly a way to do it, right? We see the videos on YouTube. Yeah, that's not a very good way of coming at your kid, right? Especially as a third grade Pee Wee football player. But if you're a 32-year-old NFL football player, yeah, maybe you can handle a little bit more of that shit from Coach Dino. Right. So there's a variety of context that I think influences when is PC appropriate, when is it not appropriate, and when has it gone too far and when hasn't it gone enough. But I think balance is a good way to kind of put it all in a context. But it's not perfect, bro. I mean,
nothing is black and white. That's the thing.
No way, man. No way.
And not just black and white answers. I'm not talking race.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's like
no, you're right.
There's people want like concrete answers for everything. I'm like, no, most things are way more complex, and you can't just give one answer for everything.
You're right. That's why a lot of people actually hate psychology. You hear people in undergraduate that like either really were drawn to psychology. Oh, I love my psychology classes, and then you had the people that were like, dude, I got an F in that thing. And they probably went on to more of the concrete engineering, mathematics, not to stereotype or whatever, where it was very cause and effect. I don't want gray area. I had a supervisor in grad school And we would ask this similar types of, well, what if a client does this? What if a client did this? And his name is Jim Worth. And Jim Worth, real smart guy. And he would look at us with this little shit-eating Jim Worth grin. And we knew what it meant. It meant it depends. He always said it depends. And it does, right? Because some people, they're going to be PC and emo. Other people, it's like, no, this dude really has a cause that he's concerned about. And so, hell yeah, he wants to be politically correct. This kid just got yelled at by a coach for sneezing. This kid is actually kind of making fun of his teammates and stuff. So it all kind of depends on the context. And truly, folks, it depends.
That's very interesting. Some people do need that. They don't want any gray area in anything, and there has to be an answer for this. Well, I need to know exactly, or I bet, have you seen that with people come in like, I need to know why I'm feeling like this, and I need to know now, and how does it stop?
Oh my gosh, yeah, and those are the tough nuts to crack. Yeah. 100%, right? Just might as well keep the theme going, right? Let's keep the and it's It is tough. I think one of I had a client once who was hung up on an ex-girlfriend for a year and a half plus, and we actually had to end therapy because he was moving, and he still was messed up about it because he never got the closure. He never got the cause and effect of everything was going fine and then it wasn't, and he could not put the pieces together. And as much as we tried to say, hey, you know what, it is what it is, it's in the past, now it's time to think about the bright future ahead of you. You got a lot of great things going for you. Girls want to talk to you, all these different types of things. Couldn't do it. And it's because people really do either they have that, things have to be that clear, black and white, the clear cause and effect, or they have a history of such where their way of thinking is so ingrained that it takes a really long and deliberate and painful process and time to change that. And that's tough. And what I mean by that is, and the ones that kind of hurt the most are the ones that just have very negative, self-defeating beliefs about themselves. I'm a piece of shit. I'm a shitty parent. My kids don't love me. I'm not a good worker. Okay. None of those are actually factual statements. Okay. Because I'm their psychologist. They tell me stories and I can hear nothing about that situation. Sounds like your kids hate you, that you're a shitty spouse, and that you're a terrible worker. And I know they're going to give it to me in the worst possible way, especially these type of self-defeating people. But their history and their parental relationships or societal perspectives or clergy or teachers or a police officer or somebody that at some point in their time, usually unfortunately it's a caregiver, the one who is supposed to give you the most care, ultimately ends up giving you very self-defeating messages that then it's like a native tongue. Then they can't learn any additional language. Like that's so fluent in their mind that the idea of thinking and speaking positive ease is impossible. That's why we think about, as you raise your kids, how do you build them up in a way that isn't overly, right? Everybody gets a trophy. Everything you do is great, son or daughter, and I love your kids' names. I didn't realize they were those names. Those are awesome, man. That it's that balance again of how do we build up people's kind of mindsets about themselves? And unfortunately, the gray area, the cause and effect, that can be difficult, especially when they have years of people telling them otherwise.
Do most athletes that have big time issues like that or anxiety come from parents that were like slave drivers and wanted to live through them and pushed them throughout their whole life and told them and were very hard on them after games and during practice and stuff?
Ice cream and murders, AJ. Ice cream and murders. And it depends.
It depends.
It depends.
Okay, right? Does an overwhelming majority come from these? So, okay. I think if you've listened to any of my podcasts here, I have a big issue with parents that are crazy on their kids and crazy hard on them. It's like the whole deal about the kid who's playing point guard and he's dribbling down the court, and every time he's looking up in the stands at his dad, and his dad's just staring daggers at him, telling him, "Go take the ball, shoot the ball, be tougher," blah, and then he yells at him and probably hits him in the car ride home.
Yeah, and I was being a bit facetious by saying that, obviously. But You're 100% right. Now, some people may look back on those individuals and their parents in a very fond way. I'm glad my parents pushed me, right? And hindsight's 2020, and in retrospect, it's probably great because his parents gotten older and maybe they've softened a bit or whatever. But when you're going through it as an adolescent that's trying to flex their autonomous muscles, it sucks, right? I mean, my parents were great and they weren't too tough on me, but when they start to ask too many questions about football, I noticed my irritation level starting to increase a bit, right? And then you have the parents that are totally helicopter, micromanaging, and you're absolutely right, because it just becomes too much. They can never escape it. And I like to flip the script with parents like that. And I say, imagine after a hard day at work, right? And you come home and your kid, and they've experienced with their spouse, and it's like the number one of their complaints about the spouse, right? As soon as I walk in the door, they're asking, "How was your day today? What did the boss say? Did you get much done? Like, how's those TPS reports?" And they're like, "It drives me fucking crazy," right? And yet they're doing that to their kids, and they don't even realize it. They're so blind to it. And what I find is, well, then I don't know how much to talk to them about it. Well, then I say, well, guess what you can probably do? Ask them. Kids are incredibly insightful. They know what they want. They know what they don't want for the most part. I mean, we all screw up. I mean, we're teenagers and we don't know everything. But if you ask your son or daughter, hey, how often do you want me to talk about gymnastics with you? Because I'm obviously interested in what you're doing. I want to make sure you're having fun, and I want to help you to develop in the way that you want to. How can I be a great resource to you without being that annoying dad or mom that's always on your case? What do you think you want? And can I check in from time to time to monitor that? And I think that's how a good way, putting the ownership on the kid, which, believe it or not, they can handle.
I like it. Ask the questions. Yeah. So let's say an athlete comes into your office, and what's the first question that you would ask them, or what's the first thing you say to them in your first meeting?
Yes. So this won't take a ton of time, so we can. I mean, I'll even do a brief role play, but I'll even answer for you. Or you know what?
Yeah, let's do it. All right, Steve. I'm Steve. I'm Dr. Steve Graef. I don't have a ponytail anymore. I used to. So I say, all right, let's say you're me. No, you're not me. That sounds terrible.
I'm me. All right. I'm Dr. Steve, and you're AJ, and you're coming in.
Okay. All right. So hey, Doc.
So, but AJ, what's up, man? Glad you could able to make it. Sorry for the little bit of the circus downstairs registering and stuff, but you made it in. You passed the first test.
Yes.
So good for you, brother.
Yes, I'm going to kill myself, Steve.
Man, we're getting right off. Well, no. What I should probably mention. So here's the way it's going to go, brother. Never been in counseling before. This is your first rodeo.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. Well, I'll take it easy on you, man. So we got Kleenexes over there, though, if things get too out of hand. So you're all good. We got about 45 minutes, 50 minutes with one another. I'm going to start off with a little spiel about confidentiality and such, basically verbally going over one of the sheets that you filled out. Then I will open up to you to kind of talk to me about what's been causing you some problems or concerns or whatever. And then I'll ask some questions to fill in the gaps. Is that cool with you?
Sounds good, but I'm fine, Steve. I don't have any issues.
Okay. Yeah. So what brought you in today then? Was it like a coach, or did somebody say, man, AJ, you're acting a little bit squirrely or sideways? What's up?
My stupid teacher said I had to come in.
Your teacher said you had to come in.
Yeah.
And what did the teacher just, hey, AJ, go to counseling. Like, what happened there?
Yeah. Because I would not fill out, I didn't want to write a paper that she felt I needed to write for extra credit.
Okay, so they don't want to write a paper. Have you not written papers before? Is that kind of AJ's MO? You just hate papers?
I guess so, yeah. But they made me come. They made me come in here.
Okay, cool. Well, let me just start off a little bit about what it is that I do. All right, because we find a variety of different people that come walk through these doors. Believe it or not, there's some people. This sounds fucking crazy, but there's actually some people that really want to be here. Can you imagine that? It's crazy. Actually, some cats come in here and they actually want to be here. And then occasionally I do have some people that get sat down from a teacher or a coach or a parent that's like, hey, you just gotta come and be here. So what I do though is I'm a person that you can kind of talk to. So I'm sure you have some buddies and stuff that you can talk to and stuff. And who knows if frankly you even have anything going on. Maybe it's just a reality of, you know what, you don't want to write the summary on Beowulf. Okay, bro, I don't blame you. doesn't sound like the most exciting thing in the world. But we're here for 45 minutes. Let's see what we can chat about. Do you hear about this Pokemon Go deal?
Okay, and end the role play.
Yep, done.
Boom. Okay, that was good. I don't know why I took on the role of the kid that said I have no issues, which I'm sure you see. But what I always just wonder, does it seem like most people want to speak about what's going on? It just may take them even one full session to really open up and feel comfortable doing it.
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, 90% of the people, and it's just an estimate, the large majority of people are coming to see me and my colleague at Ohio State and me in my private practice because they want to, okay? Not because they're feeling forced to, but truly because they want to. For the other 5%, you give them some time, and not everybody's going to come around, right? Not everybody's going to want to do that. And again, going back to that aligning with the resistance, is I totally understand that. Okay, I haven't been in therapy my entire life. I've had a couple bouts of therapy that I've gone into, and it's been very successful and an enjoyable process for me. But I can get where it's not going to be everybody's cup of tea. So I changed the direction. It's all about just kind of establishing rapport, and you see what comes out. And some people, they're just not ready to go there, or they truly just don't know what the issue is that's kind of going on. Like they really just can't really articulate that. Maybe they don't have as much insightfulness, or just lack a little bit of awareness or whatever, or it just hasn't arisen for them. But I think the majority of people, you talk to them, and I think the biggest thing, if a person doesn't want to talk to me, I'm not going to be combative, because frankly, I don't care if they don't want it. That's fine. Like, again, I don't have any skin in the game. I want to serve as an ambassador for when eventually that they do. So you might not be ready for counseling now. You might not be ready for counseling tomorrow. But I want you, I think it's Maya Angelou that said, people don't care how much you know until they show how much you care, And that's what I want to serve in that session, whether it ends up being for 30 minutes or all 50, or we just have this brief conversation. It's like, you know what? I didn't want to do that, but that dude wasn't too bad. That wasn't terrible. So later in life, maybe it's 20 years, they're like, you know what? I am struggling with something. I remember that was actually a somewhat positive experience. I wasn't ready for it. I didn't want to do it, but it was actually somewhat positive. Now I'm ready to make that step. Then I've served as an ambassador for the field.
I like it. One of my final questions would be about, you mentioned this guy earlier. So Tiger Woods, his whole situation, this theory that I've heard about. So we all know Tiger's struggling to get back to the old Tiger. And a lot of it is most likely physical. Right now he's a nerve issue or whatever, and he's currently not even playing golf. But let's say the physical is out of it. Let's say he's 100% healthy. Do you feel like all the stuff was going on behind his wife's back? Was that almost like a form of the theory I've heard is, and I feel like this could be legit. He was doing all this stuff, texting girls, messing around behind his wife's back. That was taking his mind off of golf. He wasn't thinking about the shot. He might have thought, oh, did I delete my text messages so my wife doesn't see this after I tapped this birdie putt in on the 18th at the Masters to win another green jacket? Did that like subconsciously take his mind off of golf, or could that have been one of the things?
So one of the aspects about being a psychologist and when you get sworn into the profession or whatever is not to play the diagnostic role necessarily in a media type of form such as this. Okay, so I want to place that as a caveat as an ethical psychologist that's important to me. So what I am going to do is I'm going to speak in generalities and hypotheticals, and then you can do with that what you want to, where you want to take that. I think there can be a combination of things, right? So what's going on is you have athletes that can sometimes just feel like they're literally on top of the world and they can get away with anything, okay? So they might engage in some greater risk-taking behavior as a result of that. And some of that risk-taking behavior could be engaging in infidelity, okay? There can also be potentially comorbid attention deficit and hyperactivity disorder, right? That could be categorized, okay? So then you have hyperactivity that translates into I just can't control these impulses to talk to people. Okay. Then you have the reality of sex addiction, right? Which people always kind of, oh, well, sex is a natural thing. How can you be addicted to sex? Well, people find a way to be addicted to food, and that's a natural thing, right? People find a way to be addicted to sleep, right? And that's a natural thing. So there's those types of things. There was also the potential that, yeah, maybe it did serve as a nice distraction for that. It could have very easily been a slippery slope that then just became a reinforcing pattern of a dopamine rush. Okay, so this dopamine rush, maybe it started with one particular person that texted you back, and it's like, oh, this is a new person, kind of exciting. I kind of like this. All right, well, now I've just kind of pseudo-crossed a bit of a line, and then it becomes easier to cross that line again and again and again and again. So I think that there can be a variety of things. Another thing is just the context of the situation. You're on the road, you're eating at restaurants, you're away from the family, and problems can sometimes occur because maybe you are feeling invincible or whatever. Who knows exactly what was going through Tiger's mind? It would be interesting at some point. He doesn't seem like this type of guy that he would have like a write all about kind of what really went down. More do I think, I don't know, in some ways I don't know if it would be in his best interest, but then you also talk about authenticity. I mean, Governor Weiner is going, he's creating a documentary about his whole ordeal. So
I watched it, man. It's good.
Is it really?
He is nuts. He's awesome. He had throughout all, he continued to mess up. Like he was back on track. He's running for mayor, and he let the cameras follow him the whole time. And then all of a sudden, bam, more stuff comes out, more texts. He's texting like quasi porn stars, or he turned them into, they became porn stars after.
Because of the Wiener effect.
Yeah, after like the text that he sent. And what was nuts about this dude is, like, he wasn't hiding from, he tried to lie out originally when he first came, like when it first got busted, but he let these cameras everywhere with him and his wife, Fahuma, who is Hillary's like right-hand lady still right now. And these cameras were in the back rooms the whole time. And I'm like, why did you let these cameras stay here when you continued to make these mistakes? And I guess he just, I don't know. I'm not sure why.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? As an astute expert in psychology, we all have the head scratcher, right? And there's probably some people that engage more with marriage therapy or different things like that have much more articulate responses to the Tiger Woods question than even I do. Those are just some general thoughts that I have, and I think everybody can play kind of armchair psychologist. Even real psychologists can play armchair psychologist sometimes. And who knows what was ultimately going on with him. The hope is, because I know some people like parody, right? I loved seeing and watching, and I know I'm not the only person that feels this way, the dominant Tiger. To be able to witness something that is just, we may never see something like this again in our lifetime. And it was really special because I think for a variety of reasons, his ethnicity, the relationship with his dad, there was a lot of kind of cool storylines about Tiger. There was coming back from injury. There was the one tournament where he's like limping. So there was a lot of things that was like just dominance. And then it goes the completely other direction. You talk about, we could go on about this. Like when people talk to me about the Maurice Claret situation, and I saw that he was a guest on your show, and he's done incredible things to kind of make that all like good, right? And good for Maurice that he made a deliberate choice to make a mess his message. And I think back to some regrets that I have, and you just think like, all right, I'm walking through a mall or I'm at a Starbucks and I'm like, man, that girl's really beautiful. I should talk to her. And then like she gets her order and she leaves. I'm like, damn it! Like I should have went and talked to her. What was I doing? All right, the regret song, kind of regret. And but then you look at these situations with the Tiger Woods, Maurice, though he turned his life around. That incredible documentary, that 30 for 30 with O.J. Simpson. You just see these kind of stories that is just like, God, you want to talk about psychology and emotion and a variety of context and influences that led to that. man, that's a lot of dissertations in sports psychology and even just general psychology that are built into that. But the beauty of those types of extreme situations are few and far between. The majority of us are the worried well, right? And for the listeners at home, that, it doesn't even have to be anything major, but it's just the bees are in the jar and they're just ding, 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 and we just can't release that. There are good people that are out there that have your best interest in mind, that are experts in a process of getting that shit out and helping you out, whether that's from just a general psychological perspective or you're somebody who wants to leverage that fifth aspect of performance. There's people that understand that just how much as strength and conditioning coaches understand how to get you faster or stronger. Use the resources. It does not, this is an outdated understanding that is something that makes you a weak person. Though I can also appreciate that there's cultures and ways of being that don't necessarily promote seeking out help for these types of things. But I think it's time that we all start re-examining that and figure out what can ultimately help us live the lives that we want to live. And in some cases, that's going to see a professional about something.
I like it. Yeah, I think you seem to you help people perform at their highest level and get to the highest level. And it doesn't mean you have an issue. That's the biggest thing. And I'm sure, like you said, why stigma was such a big deal. And even I still feel it when you speak about these things, about having someone. If I had to walk into your office and sit there and have you just stare at me and say, "So what's on your mind?" Or when I heard you say, "What's wrong with you?" or you wouldn't say what's wrong with you, but that's immediately what people think. Like, well, what do you mean? Why are you going to Graef's office? What's wrong with you? And I'd be like, oh, and so that stigma is there. So I think that, especially with the sports aspect of it, helps you guys. Like, no, we're not saying everybody, I got issues and I'm emo and down and gonna kill myself. I'm just saying I want to be the best I can be.
Absolutely. We're all performing. Every day we're performing, right? We're performing right now. People going into work are performing. Parents perform. And obviously playing in front of thousands of people on the gridiron is performing. Putting out a great show of Hamilton is performing. Going on the road as a candidate, a presidential candidate, is performing. So going in and clogging drains and sweeping up carpet is performing. You need to feel confident in what you're doing. You need to compose yourself when the pressure's on, and you need to focus on the things that you want to focus on. And I think if you do that and connect with the breath and can be authentic and a well-balanced person, life is going to take care of itself, right? I mean, it's going to be all right. But let's not be wrong. Life's going to kick us in the nuts too along the way. And that's the beauty of this gig. And if we ask any 16, like, if you could imagine your life, do you think it's just going to be completely smooth sailing? Kind of going along with that mental question, everybody would say, dude, no way, right? No way it's going to be completely smooth sailing. I know that. Like, there's no way. I know I'm going to have hiccups, and all the great stories are people that screw up and stuff, but then they rise from grace. And absolutely, I know there's going to be hiccups. But then when a hiccup happens, they're like blown away by it. Like, I never thought this was going to happen. How is this going to happen to me? And so we have to take the good with the bad and realize, man, that's what the journey of this life is all about. And we put one foot in front of the other, and we keep a smile on our face, and try to have a damn good time along the way as well, and support ourselves and have a team, have a squad with us.
Awesome stuff, man. I didn't know what to expect coming in talking to you, because I wasn't, but I had a feeling, knowing your passion and energy, there was going to be more than enough that we could talk about. So I know I could talk to you forever, but let people know where they can find you. I know you're Mindurance. Tell us about your website and everything.
Yeah, absolutely. So I made the decision last October to reduce my role at Ohio State. So in my role at Ohio State, I'm strictly just athletes there and helping them to perform in their life or in their sport, and super enjoyable. They're all rock stars over there. But I've always had a kind of an itch to develop my own thing, and kind of going to the whole lifestyle design that Lewis Howes has talked about, Tim Ferriss has talked about, Tom from Quest has talked about. I saw that for me, a trip to Thailand and I realized I want to be able to travel more, and I want to be able to have different experiences with my parents, and eventually when I'm in a relationship and have a family, I want to be able to be a bit more of a master of my own domain. So Mindurance came along as an idea, and there's a wave, I believe, that is coming of online counseling and coaching. And I think life coaches in general has kind of utilized that space for a while through Skype. But psychologists now are starting to get on that a little bit. Medical doctors as well are starting to get on that a little bit. And I thought, maybe it'd be a good opportunity to be able to work with individuals, because sports psychologists, they're still not like just around on every street corner. There's still not a ton of us that are out there. So if there's an individual in Toledo or Northeast Ohio or Mansfield or in Circleville or something, who are these individuals going to? And so the online component from an individual standpoint really opens up my ability to work with individuals from a counseling perspective. So working on just, maybe I am stressed and depressed and those types of things. And if you're in the state of Ohio, you can meet with me. If you're looking for just strictly performance coaching, confidence, composure, concentration, get better at the everyday performances in your sport or in your work or in your day-to-day life, that can really be from anywhere. And so the online component really helps with that. But as you might have gathered, the biggest thing that really makes me tick is getting in front of a group of people and sharing my passion for psychology. And so that's another element that I wanted to be able to develop a bit more too, was not really the motivational, not being a motivational guru per se, but having empirical type of things behind it, but sharing my passion that I have for performers, employees, and whoever. I presented once to mothers of multiples. So they all had triplets, right? Or twins or triplets. I talked to them about stress management. So that piece. And then also I have some programs that are coming down the line. I think one of the difficult things with psychology is you go to meet with somebody for 50 minutes and then it's done. Whereas if we want to engage in any other thing, such as like learning a second language or Spanish, you have to immerse yourself, and that's what starts to trigger the neurons and change the brain a bit. So I think the same thing can also apply with these programs where I'm going to kind of pop content to people every single day. So that way for 30 days or whatever, they're actually getting that content that's fresh in their brain to help them out. My blog, which also can be found at www.mindurance.org, and I'm sure you'll put that on the show notes as well, mindurance.org. That's my website. It has information about the one-on-one stuff, the speaking, and I'm also proud about the blog because it's something that, you sit down, you write, and you never know what's going to come out. You have some ideas, and it's been really fun to kind of implement that other creative side, which you're doing, AJ. I mean, this podcast, I think a lot of people that have these types of podcasts or just podcasts in general is the segment of the types of people can sometimes be a bit one note, right? Where, it's all of these, it's kind of these similar types of people. And as I look through your, collection of YouTube videos and on iTunes, man, you got everybody from John Daly to the lead singer of Or to Lewis Howes to sports writers. So, and I think that's so awesome because we can learn from everybody. And I think we can learn from everything as well. A lot of lessons of excellence that are out there.
Awesome stuff, man. Mindurance.org. We will definitely link it up for people that want to reach out to you. Not just all the people that are super messed up and don't feel good. The worried, new term that I learned. I'm guessing that's one of your psych terms you guys have thrown around in the books that you learned in school. But Steve Graef, man, Dr. Steve Graef, that is. Appreciate it. Look forward to continually talking to you, and we'll check back in with you later, especially once your site gets some more stuff going on, and your blog. I will continue to check that out. You're a great writer. But Steve, thanks again, man. Really appreciate it.
Awesome, AJ. Thanks a lot, buddy. We'll talk to you soon, and take care, man.
Thanks, man. I'll see you.
We're glad you could join us for today's conversation. After you subscribe to the show, head over to thehawkcast.com or reach out to AJ directly on Twitter at @officialAJHawk to recommend future guests that will help us inspire people to keep talking. Thanks again, and we look forward to speaking with you next time on the HawkCast.